Hey guys, it's Britt here with another special episode of More or Less. With Trump entering the office, what will become of big tech? And will it bode better or worse for startups and VCs than the past? Oh, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but Bitcoin is up 111% over the last year. So where does crypto go next? In this episode, we'll sum up some of the biggest moments over the past year in antitrust and crypto and share our thinking about where everything goes in the future. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. As we approached election season this past fall, breaking up big tech suddenly became a bipartisan rallying cry. We're kicking things off with the DOJ suit on Apple's walled garden model. Following that, we'll delve into the more recent antitrust news surrounding Google. Lots to unpack. Let's get to it.
Britt, you're the pro-regulation of the bunch. What do you think?
I'll give my feedback after Dave. Dave,
okay,
you keep going.
Dave.
I just think it's completely foolish. Like the substance of the suit as well. It's just like, I mean, I guess I could go line for line, but it seems tenuous at best. I don't think you can make I really don't think there's an antitrust case inside of this suit. I think it's very, very hard. You can't claim that just on one simple piece of data, which is that Apple doesn't even have a monopoly position in the smartphone market. You know, and like the lawsuit had to reduce the scope of the smartphone market to like just the expensive part of the market in order to try to make their case.
Oh, market definition, yes.
But I mean,
the lawyers are...
come on, like it's just, I don't know, kind of ridiculous. I don't know. I'm a little bit out of it and sick, so I'm not remembering all the details. But I kind of read it as this is another political suit. I don't see there being real antitrust merit here. And, you know, I think it's unfortunate. I'm, of course, the pro-Apple person in our bunch, so I don't want to...
I think we'd all be classified as pro-Apple. It's just a question of degrees. I mean, we all got Vision Pros, people. Like let's not, like, let's let's put this... But Britt, what are your thoughts? And then I have some as well. But
I think regardless of anything, what's going to happen is that the government can't keep up with efficiency on any of this regulatory stuff. And so it just is going to take 5 to 10 years. And by that time, Apple will be like, everyone will have moved on from this. And like the whole OS will probably be much different anyways. I feel like at a macro level, we can't regulate Silicon Valley and the technology industry unless we're doing it on a timeline that can keep up with Silicon Valley and the technology industry. And I'm dubious that is going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. I think your point, it's interesting, Dave. I mean, I was covering Google in like 2008-9, which was when they really started getting in their first regulatory hot water around search. And there's a lot of scrutiny. And you guys may remember they wanted to, when Yahoo was for sale, one proposed was that like Google would take over Yahoo search, and the Justice Department actually blocked that. And that was one of the first times that you sort of saw Google hampered in that way. But I do think there is a class of behavior that needs to be looked at in terms of all of these platforms and like how they deal with developers and payment. Like I think that's fair game.
I was going to say the developer stuff is harder to think through than the consumer side, right?
Yeah. And what the Justice Department has to do is like show that flow through to the consumer in some way. It's not dissimilar from the Justice Department has sued Google over its search deal with Apple. And I guess we'll have a verdict in that case at some point. So you have to show these things flow through. But yeah, I mean, it's a great point, Brett, about, I mean, these are clearly... there are a whole new set of issues called, AI, cloud computing, and so forth. And you're always going to somewhat feel like you're just fighting last decade's battles. At the same time, someone tweeted at me this week that they thought the tech industry didn't realize how much Washington had really turned on a dime on the issue of tech policy. So this tweet, and I can't remember who it was, but it was someone whose name I knew and seemed to know what they were talking about. They said, you can look at the inaction over the last decade and say, oh, it's ineptitude and it shows GC will never get their act together, or the EU or whomever. Or you can just see it as there wasn't the political will to do something then, and that's changed. And I don't know, I'm not close enough to it to know the answer to that question, but that's kind of interesting if actually now these larger tech companies are sort of face a new political reality or a question of political will, because that could be a rude awakening because they're kind of used to the inertia. Now, history would suggest that the United States government does not turn on a dime on anything, but I thought that was interesting. And then in light of the kind of ongoing action around TikTok, which it's funny, speaking of not tech time, I keep asking my team, what's happening? What's happening? And they're like, well, the Senate's on vacation, so nothing's happening. So apparently in parts of the country, they take vacations and
spring break.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to spring break shortly. But again, that to think that, the balance of this app kind of,
right,
it hangs so much. But anyway, I think it's more complicated than certain senators are blocking action and so forth. But yeah, so it's an open question to what degree actually, if there was a change in political will, could that look very differently for these companies? But who knows?
Yeah, I also think that a lot of this stuff is like big legal machination stuff, right? Like this is like, who knows where this is going to go? Like, I think a lot of these things are trial balloons, right? When they're first filed and they're meant as like a legal procedural step, and they're kind of full of a lot of legal stuff that the layperson, any of us, has no real idea where the roadmap's going. And they're meant to kind of build public support or see if there's public support or, whatever. It's just like purely trial balloon. And
do you guys remember when the FTC had to refile its case against Meta? To your point, Dave, like this was years ago, but their first big case that, will come to trial sometime in the next decade, like the court threw it out and said you have to redo it. Like you just like it
just
was
like
it
not
couldn't
good.
Even. Yeah, I thought that was the first time I'd ever seen that. So yeah, I think that supports your point. But at the same time, well, here's a question for you guys. Who do you think has the most job security, lawyers or venture capitalists, to our earlier conversation in tech? If you're a young person, not that there's much overlap in those groups, but
wouldn't you, I would say venture capitalists who are actually changing the way they invest.
Yeah, lawyer, I don't know. It depends on because why. Like, I don't know. It's a good question.
I think the antitrust lawyer has to have a lot of job security in Silicon Valley. I mean, it's crazy.
Like there's like the contracts lawyer and the paralegals.
We spoke about it last week, but actually following our taping last week, I broke more news with the team around the Inflection Microsoft deal and how it's structured. And you look through every T&C of that deal, which for those of you who didn't listen was essentially Microsoft hiring the team behind Inflection, licensing some of their technology, and not acquiring the company. And you just got a sense that some lawyers had a lot of fun and were very busy putting together that. So the decision in Google's long-running antitrust case came down. And this is specifically the case where the question of Apple's making Google, getting paid by Google to be the default search engine in the iPhone and Mac ecosystem. There's a lawsuit brought saying that was anti-competitive, and the judge said, actually it is. And that deal is illegal and will have to be restructured in some way. We don't know how. The remedies are for another day. What did you guys think about this? The reason it reminded me to tie it to Sam's is, interestingly, the judge found that Google was not a monopoly in search advertising because Amazon has emerged as such a big player. So the rulings specifically related to internet search. And we're going to see a shakeup of that deal and maybe the ecosystem, but curious for everyone's thoughts.
I mean, it's pushed the Alphabet stock all the way back to April 18th levels. It's really retraced months of progress.
I love the part that he noted that Microsoft's Bing search engine has 80% share of the search market on the Microsoft Edge browser that nobody uses. Like that was one of their retorts to why
It's
this
like,
is not antitrust.
for idiots.
They were like, so other browsers and other search engines can be successful.
But the question, does this change anything? Or is this
No.
another
Well, changes their revenue.
late-breaking antitrust decision that has absolutely no impact?
Well, first
Which
of all,
one
is
is
it
it?
actually going to stick? I mean, this is not like, what does this actually mean? And like, how many appeals do we have ahead of us here?
We got at least one. I mean, I guess there's the big all the way up. But good point. Appeal
Second,
will
I'd say,
happen.
look, I mean, this is the classic, unfortunate reality of a lesson technology companies have learned, which is you just outrun regulation, and by the time it catches up, you're far ahead, and who the fuck cares? And it leads to very bad behavior. We saw it escalate in Uber, that clearly did this on a local level at massive scale. OpenAI has been trying to play this playbook, right? But it's kind of one of those things where you're like, it's not that it doesn't matter. It does matter. It has a revenue impact. But I feel like Google's like, the place where this would have really mattered happened like a decade ago.
Jess,
Right?
I would love for you to do an information breakdown on the Google-Apple incestuous relationship, because
It's my favorite topic in business.
everyone's saying, so Google paid Apple $20 billion for the default search deal, and Apple's services division, which this revenue went into, generated $85 billion. So about a quarter of its services division is coming directly from Google.
Well, it used to be like 100% though, didn't it?
No.
Just be curious to
No.
track this over time, to like understand more about other things they pay for.
Services includes the App Store and
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Apple Care,
And Apple
anything you can
TV.
subscribe to. Yeah.
TV too.
Yeah. I'm still not understanding the monopoly case here. Can we break this down a little bit? Like, I'm not understanding it.
Well, it's that Google's a monopoly in internet search and therefore can pay more than others can pay to further that monopoly.
To be clear, they're a monopoly, but this is an interesting thing. They're really a monopoly in internet search advertising, which is why they can pay for the search box.
No, but the court specifically said that they aren't.
But that's ridiculous, because that's why they're able to pay so much. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, the power of Google is their monetization, which then they can flow through to do this stuff.
But Sam, they're not a monopoly. They have intense competition from Meta. They have intense competition from Amazon.
No, a search only.
We're not talking about ads.
94.9% share on mobile.
The difference is, David, this is the difference between the advertisement that incepts that I need the plantar fasciitis tool,
I understand,
versus the advertising that clears it.
Yes,
I think it's a good point. That is a fair point of whether the court should have treated them separately, because Sam, you raise I think a very strong point, but regardless it is. And so this decision came down by arguing that it was in search itself. And so now,
And what consumer harm did they claim existed because of that?
Ability to compete.
That's not consumer harm, Britt. Like, that's the thing about monopoly law, is that you have to show harm.
Show consumer harm?
No, you have to show consumer harm, usually in pricing.
Not always, but yes. But
for the thing that's going on. And I think it's very hard to understand where that is in this.
So I personally think if the case ended up coming down, that the courts defined it as the search ad market was not a monopoly, but the search consumer was, and that my money says this gets struck down, which is why the stock isn't down.
That's interesting, actually. I think now Google's stock took more of a beating.
It's fine. Again, it's
retraced
Apple.
like 3 months. I meant Apple. Yeah. I meant Apple.
Because it's a quarter of their services revenue.
Yeah.
But it really didn't. I mean, Jess, it's like back to like May pricing, June pricing?
Tech people hear the word breakup and think the sky is falling, usually.
Well, why don't you tell what's the latest on the breakup stuff?
Yeah. So, and then today there were headlines. So there was a court decision on antitrust that went against Google, but we've still been waiting for what the remedies are that the government is going to push for. And we got a little more detail, I guess late last night or recently, about that, which basically says that a breakup could be on the table. And I don't think they were significantly more specific than that. And of course, a breakup could mean many things. I mean, one of the things at stake is, Google has many different advertising businesses, and even within display, It's got some where it's sort of the marketplace for some types of advertising, somewhere it's selling directly. And a lot of the cases really focused on some of those businesses. There are many different cases.
YouTube.
But
Yeah.
YouTube. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. What do you guys think the government should break up Google?
I was a Googler, but I have to admit, I kind of do. I mean, don't you think we just need to be able to be more competitive in this industry? And, we were at a dinner last night with like 15 VCs, and the question was like, do you think that, the internet has produced all these companies that have accrued trillions of dollars in value? Mobile was like the next wave that produced companies like Uber with like $160 billion in value, but not like trillion-dollar companies. And do you think AI will be the same, better, or worse than those two sort of cohorts? And it's just like everyone on the table was like, well, it's all going to fall to the incumbents, but it will be bigger than mobile, but incumbents will still hold out. Unless I think there is a meaningful, regulation and sort of breakup across some of these companies. But I don't even know how that would go. Like, what would you break?
Yeah, and actually, I was just looking this up as opposed to just remembering things. And I guess what the Justice Department said was that it might push for Google to divest Chrome, Android, and Play, its app store.
How does that impact the monopoly?
Yeah, well, I guess search, is like Google searches is sort of embedded. Less so in Play,
Yeah,
I suppose.
isn't it about targeting search itself and trying to reduce its market dominance, which seems to be held together by there's Chrome, there's the Android operating system, there's the Apple deal, so Safari, right? And then there's...
Which is very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, and then there's... the Play Store... does that matter? I don't know. And what does this even mean? And how long would this take, right? And what would the actual downstream implications be? Antitrust law is such a difficult, weird thing in the American, ecosystem. On the one hand, I really don't want more regulation in the world. It's like there's already so many regulations that it's almost impossible to innovate in any direction. On the other hand, we do have an enormous consolidation of power in big tech right now. I mean, it's truly unbelievable. We almost don't visualize it enough, how big the consolidation at the top is. Maybe that's what we need more of from you, Jess, is some really crazy visualizations that help people truly understand just how big these things are compared to the rest of the ecosystem. And so it does seem for American competitiveness that we need something to happen. But what is a different question entirely.
So I'm interested, I just looked this up. So the Google Play Store and Android are each about a $50 billion annual business. And that's
these things are
Fortune
50 businesses on their own.
But the Google Ads business is approximately 225 billion. Which is different, but not as,
But I wonder, and I think this is actually Google's defense, but I wonder, Android's open source. And of course, ish. There are different forks, and then there's the Google version of Android, which is where they bundle their services.
Which is what everybody uses because they're forced to in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. I would say take aim at stuff like that, which I think the governments have in the EU, right? There could be these very anti-competitive practices in things like that, but I also I don't know. I think Android's pretty important for the world.
Well, but the question is whether or not Android should operate on its own, independent of the mothership, right? And it's funny. I haven't spent enough time thinking about this to really have a well-formed opinion as to which pieces to cleave off to create a more competitive environment, and how on earth you would possibly go about doing that and how long it would take.
I mean, I think and Dave, that's a good point, because, a lot of us in and around the industry, for years, people have been saying, break up big tech or da-da-da. And like, it's kind of interesting that now these proposals are really advancing to their furthest ever kind of state. And I guess where I am at this moment is more like, I think taking really strong aim at like the practices is important. I'm willing to accept that may not solve some of these problems, because the scale is just so big, like that the habits have been formed already, and that's kind of game over. But I also think that it is really uncharted territory. I mean, like what have other companies been broken up? I mean, AT&T, okay.
AT&T
I
was
have to
easier
go back and study
because
that.
there was quite literally a physical nature to the AT&T network, which resulted in much higher prices and all these kinds of things. So you could be like, oh, we're going to make a regional bell over here and a regional bell over there. And, we're going to break the literal network up. In the case of Microsoft as the other example, well, what practically happened with Microsoft? It seems as though, they got slowed down. I remember being up at Redmond during the early years of Facebook when we first did the original ad deal with Microsoft. And I remember being up there, and there would be like literally 20 PMs in the room every time we did a meeting, because there was like a person managing the regulation for like 20 different reasons for every single move that we talked about doing. And so like, what did Microsoft actually do? It like added 20 PMs to the room, right? And things got really, really slowed down. So it's almost like the government operating system showed up inside of Microsoft and slowed it down to like the crawl of the DMV for like 10 years, right? Microsoft, like after the, time period was up, I don't remember how long it was, just like slingshotted back to the number one most valuable company in the world, like with a vengeance, right? And basically like dominates in a whole bunch of areas. Again, notwithstanding one of which is AI. And so what's really going to happen here is the real question to me. And like,
but do you think, Dave, it matters that they would do this potentially in the next 5 years, when there is this big new computing inflection with AI, and so maybe this like knocks Google on its knees a bit, to your point, like Microsoft was, or just slows them down?
I mean, I wonder, and I'm just riffing here, this is like, but what if this is a blessing in disguise for Google? Like, basically, the knock against Google, when I was interviewing, so Liz Reed runs Google Search. She runs product and engineering for Google Search. And I said, the perception is you guys are way behind. Like, Perplexity exists. I mean, not that Perplexity is any or close to the size, but like, you're way behind is the perception, right? When it comes to AI, like, why? And she didn't really answer the question. I mean, she gave the sort of what a executive candidate does say in those situations, and talking about lessons learned and so forth. But there's one answer to that question of why Google in some areas has fallen behind, which is just they're too big and there are too many people and there are too many lawyers in the room. Now, the lawyers aren't going away, even if they split up, right? There are probably more. And so I kind of wonder, like, if and Eric Schmidt was taped saying comments that he then said he didn't mean to say or didn't say, saying Google was losing to OpenAI because they were only going to the office 3 days a week and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I think maybe that's it's not clear that it's doom and gloom, whatever the scenario is. Now, what's clear is that these legal issues are creating like a next level of bureaucracy and distraction, and obviously undergoing any sort of restructuring would only add to that. So
here's the question, totally independent of whatever the legal and governmental muckety mucks want to do or are talking about doing, which is, how do we make America the most competitive it possibly can be in this era? how can we be the most innovative? How can we unleash innovation again in Silicon Valley? And what we do know is that more and more and more regulation of big tech equals less and less and less acquisition of small tech.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Which results in the complete and total freezing of the innovation ecosystem of Silicon Valley. And so the worst possible outcome here would be that whatever happens here causes even more regulation and even more slowing down of innovation because, these trillion-dollar capital holders can no longer acquire literally anything, right? And it gets even worse than it is right now because it's pretty bad right now, And so the question is, what regulatory move here would actually unleash more innovation, which needs to be able to access liquidity at some point, right, along its innovation curve. And the investors and the players in the ecosystem need to be able to access liquidity to fund the innovation. And right now, it's completely frozen.
Speaking of regulation, the SEC went after crypto with 583 enforcement actions in 2024. Trump 2.0 came back with a crypto pro stance, and with 2,950 active projects in Bitcoin ETFs from BlackRock and Fidelity, Michael Saylor is the happiest he's been in a while. We'll touch on several key conversations regarding crypto for this segment, starting off with a throwback from episode 1, the SEC suit on crypto giant Coinbase.
So the SEC, which has made no secret of its fact that its plan is to sue every major crypto project in the United States, including some not, right? I actually sued Binance the day before they sued Coinbase. We knew this was coming. Coinbase actually tried to built a whole PR campaign around the fact
hasn't
that it
this
was
been
coming.
kind of a back and forth for quite a while at this point?
They got a Wells notice a few weeks ago. So we knew it was coming, but it's here. And I think the reaction we heard is, it's actually a pretty broad case. Like many of the cases to date had been arguing over whether a particular token was a security. This case is also talking and claiming that it is not legal to operate exchanges. I think even questioning some of the situation around wallets. So way broader, I think, than others. But Sam, you obviously follow this in
look,
detail.
Everyone's got their own narrative around this, and who knows? The reality is my understanding is like the government's basically losing the SEC's losing the XRP case, right? The Ripple case. And
which is over the token as security.
Yeah, what was that case? Just so everybody understands.
Just claiming that XRP, the Ripple token's a security, and they've actually, my understanding is, basically lost all of the major cases they've tried to go against legitimate projects. They've won them against the things that are pure scams, which there are in crypto. Like they've won some cases, but all the major ones of legitimate projects they've lost. And my understanding is they're trying to be aggressive, but they're kind of going for partial victories wherever they can get them right now. Look, I think the really big story on this, honestly, is the thing the crypto industry has been asking for literally a decade is just clarity, right? And so to some degree, technology moves pretty fast. There's a lot of really interesting applications of this type of stuff. I think it's great that effectively, I don't think even the SEC is claiming things like Bitcoin or Ethereum are actually securities anymore, right? That we've kind of moved beyond that. And so I think a lot of these kind of things
is that true, or is this wrapped up in that question?
I don't think so. I think everyone's kind of, even the SEC has come to, and again, my understanding is those two, as in terms of how they were launched and how they've grown, are not considered securities by anyone. So look, I think in the end of the day, the only thing the crypto community really wants is clarity more than anything else. And if this is one step more towards clarity and some pain on the way there, that's fine. So I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic that the ball is moving forward. The regulators are getting more sophisticated. There'll be good things put in place, and I do actually think people understand in the government that if you want the United States to be an innovator in this is happening with or without the U.S. Laws need to be good and clear, right? You don't want bad actors. You do want good actors. You do want good policy. So I don't know. My kind of net on the whole thing is it's fine. And if anything, it's like better for it to happen sooner than later. And like it isn't like there's any super smoking gun here. It's going to be like a lot of like effectively trench warfare over very specific things, which will play out over a very long period of time.
Is this the right way to go about this?
It's the political way. People want to score points in different places. I mean, it's the horse we got. I mean, I don't like right or wrong. Like, I think what would have been right would have been had clarity on this at a federal level a decade ago, right?
I think what you outlined, Sam, is how regulation of new technology often proceeds, especially in the US. But I'm not sure that's going to happen in this case. I mean, if you zoom out, like, you know, players in the industry are incredibly weakened by this. I mean, there's been a lot of factors besides regulation to like the collapse of key parts of the ecosystem.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of shocking to me that there's this big regulation.
They're going to have to leave the country, you know? I mean, they're backpedaling on that a little bit.
It's a big world. I mean, Bitcoin's down. I'm looking right now in the last week, 2%. ETH is down 1%. Like, this is kind of a big nothing burger from how the crypto markets are digesting it, right? And these are highly global things. So, look, the U.S. should have good regulation, and we should be a leader in this, and we're set up to be, and we have the technology, we have the tech, we have a lot of things in our favor on this side.
It's deeply frustrating that we're not.
But it is what it is, and like, you know, the world will, as technology always does, reorganize around whatever the government decides is reality. I mean, you know, we can have, just in Europe, you can have 1,000 GDPR pop-ups if that's what the government really wants, and like, fine, right? So like, I'm not super worried about it long-term. Technology, I think, will kind of continue to march on, and I'd be happy for there to be more clarity, personally.
I think the same thing's playing out with AI, right? And it's like a shame it took the government so long to do this for crypto. Like, I think we're going to have to figure out what the AI regulation stuff
I think there's a big difference, guys. I
mean, I think there's a big difference.
The current position of the U.S. government is basically that Coinbase shouldn't exist. I mean, if you look at the number of businesses that it's arguing are operating illegally is numerous.
Well, to be clear, it's not the government, it's the SEC.
I'm sorry,
right?
the SEC.
And
right? But the government has decided they're not going to legislate, and Gary's going to legislate. So I think
Gary's decided that Gary's going to legislate.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that
he,
like that's actually
he has a boss, right? And so I think that like, I mean, we've all covered and witnessed sort of Washington being more or less aggressive in different like tech epochs, but I think the current, you know, the administration isn't saying like, let's put up some safeguards around crypto. They're basically saying these things shouldn't operate. And look, if Coinbase is like the most legitimate of the players. So I don't think it will end in Armageddon. And I think that, you know, the global point is the right point in terms of what happens to the technology. But like, I don't think it's very rare to basically, you know, it's like the government suing Meta and saying actually photo sharing is illegal, and actually letting people upload text is illegal, and like
they're fishing. They want a pound of flesh, right? And what I basically say is like the one thing I will say I think is precarious for crypto at this moment, and I've said this for a long time and I really believe it, is the way this usually works with technology regulation is some people want something, but there's a ton of user benefit that people really care about, and so they can't go too far because the people really want it. So AI in Europe
is the TikTok situation.
Well, and it's also like the hilarious OpenAI Italy situation, where like Italy was like, OpenAI is completely non-compliant with our privacy laws. Absolutely true, right? That we're shutting it off, and like OpenAI put up a web form. And Italy's like, well, if you put up the web form, which does nothing to solve the problem, then like I guess it's okay. But like really the story there is Italy's like, fuck, our people kind of want this, right? And so I think the story of crypto right now, the reason I think it is slightly different, or like it does need to figure it out, is like the way this usually works is like people are like, I love this thing, it's super valuable, I really care about it, and like there's a balance there. I think crypto's in a moment where like it's searching for a meaningful use case beyond Bitcoin. I think those exist. But like the timeline is ticking to have those in a way that people care about, or the government gets a lot more free rein to be like, well, we don't like this, and no one seems to give a shit, right? And that's the place you don't want to be as a tech platform.
The point I was trying to make was just more that like, I'm hopeful. It'd be great. This is a pipe dream. This is the more of me. If like we could get in a more accelerated rhythm with government regulation with some of these key innovations happening in technology. And I think like I would imagine the time it took to start regulating crypto more efficiently is going to be longer than the time it takes to regulate AI, just because of the pace it's moving. And I think that like the lawmakers are they're forced to like figure this out faster because it's impacting so much of the economy, right? So crypto wasn't, I think, having as much of an impact on the economy as AI will, and there will be like an accelerated time frame to start leaning in there.
Crypto's back-ish.
Crypto's party time, crypto.
Okay, let's talk about that. What do you mean back?
Well, all I know is the other day I was on Twitter, and whenever crypto is doing well, hundreds of people start GMing me GM.
Yeah.
Oh God, Sam got canceled for GM. His GM.
We need a GM.
Opinions.
We need a Sam's GM like weather vane.
I'm not there yet, but I'm almost at the point where I just could sell whenever I start getting too many GMs. Because basically, this was like many years ago when crypto was ripping. I'm like a huge crypto fan, huge bull, big investor, very proud of the work we've done in the space, really believe in it. But I think the good morning thing, some of the crypto community memes.
So for those of you who have the fortune of never having to recognize this, there's a moment where crypto people they say GM, meaning good morning to each other. And it's a salutation.
It's very just friendly.
Like, what is that?
Here's the thing. No, it's not. This is my point from back in the day is crypto is like really important technology and it's great, but it has, like a lot of technologies, like AI, a lot of cult-like tendencies. And there's like never going to, like not going to
I would argue, Sam, that it has a cult multiplier because
maybe,
Web 2 and social were hype generating technologies where people got really, really excited. And then the technology itself made even more information spread. So people got even more excited. AI has that same factor. The thing about crypto is money's attached to every single thing, right? So it's like an even more bonus multiplier on the hype.
But I actually think it is fine, but it's a net negative that it has this liability around like cults from my perspective, because it causes a lot of the bullshit hype and a lot of people to lose a lot of money. Like the NFT thing was obviously, I'm happy to say we stayed out of it. It's obviously fucking stupid, right? And that was like all cult bullshit. And so crypto has a lot of cult tendencies.
There's no other cults in crypto?
No, there are a lot of other cults. There are a lot. I mean, Elon runs an entire cult-based stupid coin. Like, there's a lot of cults in crypto. And like, the thing about them is that there's the fundamentally real stuff of crypto, and there's the cult crap. And good GM, so saying GM to each other, or this dumb NGMI, not going to make it, like making fun of people for being out of the cool clubs kid. It's all BS. But I, years ago, as this was running, like made the hilarious / unintentional mistake of pointing out to the crypto community that GM, so I was like, GM is stupid, and got like thousands. People started a meme coin specifically off of this, making fun of me, which I'm happy to say I profited on a little bit.
I bought that meme coin and made some money.
But the basic point is like, so it's funny. So now it's mostly died down, but like every once in a while, these crypto kids will like remember that I hate GM as crypto's ripping and they feel rich and decide to DM me GM a lot. And so I know it's time to sell.
Oh, well, I see.
I will say, I think the more serious answer to the question is that we're now in the phase of crypto where we're starting to connect these technologies to the real world in a more meaningful way. I mean, I just did a crypto deal about a month ago, and we're starting to see the underlying technologies be applied to various different areas where you get real world use cases, and the end consumer actually has no idea that it's even crypto. And to me, like, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. Even Sam, during the NFT wave, I was always saying to people that NFTs are like MP3s, where way back in the day when MP3s showed up and podcasts and all this stuff, people would constantly say the word MP3, MP3, MP3. Today, when you like play a song on Spotify, you have no idea what the file type is, and it all just works in the background. It's a really, really advanced MP3, but in the future, what an NFT was last year will, be some big part of a CRM system. And, that's like going to be great. Nobody's going to know the better.
100% with you that the fundamental idea of an NFT is a valuable abstraction, right? And like, it's a valuable thing. I think what I'm talking about specifically is just this, like, this moment where everyone thought we're going to recreate an entire alternative asset ecosystem of equal value in pixel stupid images in the metaverse, right?
Sure.
Dave, I'm interested in what the real world use case is, because this seems a question
For
a lot of
NFTs?
people are excited about. Maybe it's top
One of
secret,
them, I think of it as CRM 3.0. We've talked a little bit about this on past pods, but there's a lot going on in creator land, and in particular in fandom right now. Like Taylor Swift's Person of the Year. Why is that? She's got one of the biggest fandoms in the world. I got really excited this year because my Boulder, my university, hired Deion Sanders as the football coach and lit up the fandom.
You've brought it up a few times.
Yeah, and the fandom was lit up in a way that it never has been before. The problem is, in any of these cases, can these artists sell a ticket to somebody, sell merch to that same person, connect with that person online, and can all of those different disparate data points be connected into some kind of a system where the artist or the person who's at the top of the fandom offer something to those people that identifies them in the ecosystem as a bigger fan? Like, that's the simplest way that I like to think about it. And the answer is no. Like, we haven't actually developed, like, the internet thus far has not developed.
There used to be cookies.
Yeah, there used to be cookies, but we thought social networking might do this, didn't. And the reality is, a wallet address, whether or not the user knows they have it or not, is a really good way to do this. And as are many of the different crypto abstractions. So that's just one,
and it's
really
happening in real time. Like, Selena Gomez literally launched this past week or two with Rare Beauty, which is her beauty brand. And so her audience, her fans are now able to sort of buy different things, show up to her shows, all of these different actions.
Why do
they don't even know it's
for that?
crypto? But because they're able to sort of trace all these fan engagements across using blockchain technology to sort of verify them among different types of merchants and multiple purchases, and then offer them rewards, right? Which is just a new type of loyalty program.
Oh, I see.
Part of the real answer for crypto for those types of use cases is, I think, pretty simple, which is everyone would want to be the CRM of record for that, but no one wants that person to be the CRM of record for that, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically just like a standoff where it's like, yes, Salesforce would love to do that business. Facebook would love to do that business and be the wallet provider or the identity provider for this type of stuff.
Yep.
But if you're an artist, or like the reality is to get all the tools and different avenues to play together, no, everyone will be like, well, I'm not going to let you own it. But if no one owns it, then maybe we'll be okay and we can connect some things we otherwise. So it's actually, ironically, it's actually more of a business development hack than it is anything else. That's why you need crypto.
PayPal own it.
They'd love to, but no one's going to let them own it. No one's that stupid.
Yeah, I think one of the big things here is creators aren't stupid anymore. Creators aren't going to build audiences and then have to rent it back from Facebook or rent it back from Twitter, right? Like, they want to be able to not just speak directly to their audience, they want to be able to speak directly to subsets of their audience that are based on many, many different actions that have happened.
And look, there are places like, the reality is, you talk about like crypto, not crypto use cases. People used to love pitching the like tickets you can move around without an intermediary, and they're crypto tickets when you buy something at a concert. The reality is that Ticketmaster locked up that market. We'll see whether they stay locked up in that market. The app is fine. You get your tickets. You want to send them something, you send to their email address or phone number. It's like, it's fine. And it's like a monopoly and it works. No one likes that, but like from an experiential perspective, it just does what you'd want it to do. I think everyone would prefer it to be an open system. It's not going to happen. And so there are a lot of other areas where I think the open system is strictly worse for any one use case. But if you have a very combinatorial thing across a bunch of verticals or whatever, right, where like you basically can't organize a winner, then like the neutral party wins, right? And that is kind of the good news about crypto now, and I'll talk my own book on this for a second, as a seed investor, is like it actually works, right? Like Solana as an ecosystem can actually do this now, which even 2 years ago it couldn't. Like no one really could. I'm very short the Ethereum world. I'm very long Solana.
Same.
It's a personal book.
Just to put that on record, I agree with you completely.
On the record.
But the difference is, before these were all ideas that like were kind of cobbled together but theoretical, and now it's like, this stuff is like, you now get crypto pitches. I'm sure the Morans do as well, where it's actually great. The pitch is a good business pitch. And it's not like, well, it's crypto. It's like the crypto is just infrastructure. It's the same as like people who like pitch a business and it happens to use AI, but it's not about AI. It's not like you have to like, we're not an AI business. We're not a crypto business. We're just a business, right? And it just happens that these rails work.
Yes.
So how are you guys feeling about tokens?
So, I mean,
which tokens?
What do you mean? What Clarify the question.
Well, but okay, so those are there's a category of startup that's using blockchain, very, very effectively, right? There are also, are you seeing new companies that want to create new tokens?
So for many years, there was this kind of question about how to capitalize and how to value crypto companies, right? And so there's a lot of different forms of papers that were sort of, are we financing a token? Are we financing an operating company? Is there a token warrant? There's like all this complexity. It's all basically standardized at this point, right? Which is you're buying equity with a token warrant because some of these companies might create a token at some point as part of their business model and you should own your pro rata part of it, but it's not necessarily core to what they do. But you'd be really stupid to not have a token warrant based on history we've all, unfortunately, very firsthand experienced, right? As a seed investor in Ripple, as a seed investor, a lot of things I can tell you a lot. I have a lot of missing zeros on my net worth for missing out on some of that. Luckily got it right in some places as well. So that's all standardized and does exist. Then there's like, what things do you want to own? I mean, for me, like Bitcoin, again, I've owned it for over a decade and like it's very obviously worth owning from my personal perspective. I guess I'm supposed to say this is not financial advice or something stupid, but like it's clear. And then again, I'm like
the bear says it's clear.
I never understood. Anyone who has in their Twitter bio, like not financial advice, you like immediately unfollow, right? You're just like,
you only financial advice. Are there interesting new classes of startups that comprise tokens?
Yes. But they're not very many. There's one that's going to launch in January I'm excited about. There's a handful out there, but we are long past the era of everyone launches a stupid token, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
We have Elon, who has officially announced the co-head
Pretty strange.
with Vivek Ramaswamy of the Department
of the DOGE department.
DOGE.
So ridiculous.
Department of Government Efficiency, following his Dogecoin, blah,
and
blah,
simultaneously,
blah, blah.
Dogecoin is doing like $1 billion in trading today, which is like unbelievable. I don't know. I didn't look at the actual change in volume, but it's like pretty dramatic.
No, well, it's doing 28 billion in trading, but it's doing an insane amount of trading. But Bitcoin, Solana ripping.
Yes, and we should talk about, Sam, were you going to talk about how Doge was a satirical point to begin with? Is that the point you were about to make?
You said it was his Dogecoin. It's like he is a late adopter of Dogecoin. But yes, he certainly loves the meme. Who doesn't love a good meme? There's this whole half joke, half serious thing about how like the most amusing outcome is usually the one that happens in the world. Instead of Occam's razor is the simplest. It's like just the most amusing outcome is what happens. And I have to say,
that's the Hitchhiker's Guide. That's the Hitchhiker's Guide philosophy.
It seems like that's the era we're living in. Is that we're in a most amusing era for sure. And I feel like until it's all real and we see what the outcomes of it, who knows? But it is very amusing.
Well, here and then I don't want to go too deep politics here, but
3 memes, right? We've got Doge, we have Maha and MAGA now, right? So it's like the meme constituency.
So Elon's taken over this post he created on government efficiency / the federal bureaucracy. Instantly there's speculation. This obviously he cut Twitter by 44% or 50%. I don't know what he did. He slashed and burned X, and claims he's going to do the same with the federal government. Listeners of the pod should know that our very informed sources don't think he will do the same to the federal government because the Constitution, as well as many other federal statutes, are very specific about how the federal budget works.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think will happen? I know that's speculative, but what should people be looking out for here?
I think the U.S. government should be worried that they're going to lose all their advertisers.
And then it should sue those advertisers.
Yeah. How does the conflict of interest work with like SpaceX and all NASA? Just or like not NASA, but like anything related to Department of Defense, like.
We may be in the era of what's known as no conflict, no interest.
Oh, it's a bad place to be.
Like, I don't know that we have laws around this because we've never had this happen before. Like,
well, that seems to be the thing that's happening here, which is that they've created a job title, which is basically like a external senior advisor title. It seems like to me, it's not actually cabinet. It's not actually inside the government. It's more of this is a senior advisor. I don't know what actually, I'm not a, Beltway
I think that's
expert,
right, Dave. Yeah.
but I'm like an armchair expert at this at best, and that seems like what's going on here is that they've kind of invented a title that's fancy and funny, but really what's happening is we've got a senior advisor from industry that is advising the president, and that's basically seems to be what is happening. Brass tacks.
I should point people interested in this topic, which probably all of you. The New York Times had a very good story by Teddy Schleifer about, sort of how, Elon is glued to Trump's hip at Mar-a-Lago, sitting in on every single meeting, and, has uncle status according to his grandchildren. And it's fascinating and like very important to understand. I think the day after the election, I was getting a lot of texts from people saying, okay, what's going to happen now that the tech bros are going to take over government and so on and so forth. And, I think so far what's happening is the tech bros are not like taking cabinet positions, but
they're taking ambassadorships.
They're advising on the position,
doing jobs that don't matter.
They're the closest to advisors, right? Like they're in the air, and time will tell how that plays out.
But that's also a very tech way to go about it, Jess. They're basically behaving.
Yeah, you never want to be on the board. You want to be the board observer.
Yeah, right? I was going to say they're behaving exactly like venture capitalists. And since Elon is basically a super VC.
Well, especially because they would have to sell their control.
They're all getting internships. Well, the interesting move, which I think people haven't fully come to yet, which I always was very fascinated by, is when some Wall Street guys have ended up, I think, in cabinet level positions, you have to sell everything.
Yeah, totally.
But this is a very important caveat. You don't have to pay taxes. Like you can defer out your taxes on the sale.
Wait, defer or not pay? Those are different things.
Well, this is important to look into, but there is something where like you basically get, and we should look into this if readers care, but there's this hack where some Goldman Sachs guys got cabinet positions, and they're like, well, the reason they did that, or like at some level of seniority of the government, is because you are forced to sell, but you don't have to pay taxes on the sale. And so it's actually an incredible diversification strategy if you are in the 0.00001% that can pull that off. So I'm not even sure the tech bros realize this yet, but there probably is some level of strategy if you're being totally draconian about it, where it actually makes sense to get a very senior position for tax-free diversification.
So do you just hope does that start on like the day of the inauguration? And then you just like hope that all the markets keep climbing until like January 20th?
Well, I know. Or you just like, if you, it's just instead of having, there are these funds where you can take your shares of a company and you contribute shares rather than cash. So you can get free diversification into a basket of goods. It's kind of like that, but on massive steroids, right? So if you have like a massive appreciation in some equity and you want to diversify out of it, this is like the ultimate government strategy to do it.
So I'm sure the tech bros know this because the tech bros like nothing more than tax avoidance. So or strategery. I shouldn't say avoidance, strategery.
What are you talking about, Jess? Tech bros like to create value, not care about tax.
Some of them, Dave. Some of them.
Well, maybe we know different ones, Dave, but but anyway, so yes, I think FaZe, as of a week, these guys are very, very whispering in the ear of Trump. I think, and I have to go and talk on CNBC about this tomorrow, so maybe you guys can give me some talking points. But I was asked the question of, in general, what tech CEOs and CEOs think of Trump, and it, at first I was like, well, they're really, cheering potential deregulation. Obviously, the market is up so strongly, but as my reporting's continued, it's sort of led to like they're concerned about a lot of contradictions in Trump's policy. So, for example, how China will actually shake out. You look at a company like Apple that just can't be, for Apple does tremendous amount of business, makes its products, so on and so forth in China. Even Elon needs raw materials from China. So I think the mood I'm hearing, but I'm interested in what you guys are hearing, is more of like, okay, yes, there's some very specific deregulatory things we can be excited about, but also a lot of concern about how the tariffs and other potentially contradictory policy moves will play out. Seem reasonable?
Yeah, look, I think everyone, I spoke to my very wise trainer this morning about this, and he's like, it is what it is. Let's see how it plays. It'll be interesting, right? I think that's kind of the mood I've heard from a lot of people is, It's going to be shaking up the chessboard for sure in a whole bunch of ways. And I think everyone has confidence that Trump's ego is very tied up in the economy going up, which, that alignment is probably good if you're in private business broadly. But, I think it's kind of a wait and see. It's clearly a shakeup of the whole kit and caboodle. But I think at this point, everyone, at least in my world, I've heard a lot of people saying, and I know that these groups exist. I've heard a lot of people saying, that, in their communities are very depressed, or their communities are this or that. And, again, it's all based on your filter bubble and who you talk to. But the people I talk to are kind of like accepted as what happened, excited the market is up, and kind of in a meh, let's see what happens type mood.
And the cryptos. Someone sends me another Bitcoin stock price chart.
Oh, not that your husband's been doing that every hour.
Well, I was using it in the generic sense, but yeah.
I got your point there, Jess.
We're very happy that crypto is ripping. And I do think, it kind of shows there was real regulatory overhang where people were worried about kind of what that was going to look like. And, we'll see.
Sam, does Bitcoin hit 100K this month?
Ooh.
It might. I mean, that's within random walk at this point. I mean, the only thing that I've heard contrary to that is that, look, I think there will be a lot of sell pressure into
no question.
Around 100K, just because a lot of people have been up and down and they say that's a good number and I'm out. And so I don't know. I mean, like many of us on this call, I'm like a long-term crypto holder and will continue to be, and have no intentions of selling or anything. But I think the 100K thing is kind of an emotional thing more than a practical thing.
Yeah, a lot of stock prices going around.
My favorite email that I've received this week was, I won't reveal who, but Sam and I got an email from someone that we were involved in a little crypto fund together with, saying, note to self, always listen to Sam and Dave.
See, I don't get emails like that either. What's wrong?
You got an email this week, Jess. I copied you on one.
Oh, yeah, you did, actually. I forgot. Thanks, Britt.
We were trying to convince this person to keep all the money in the cryptos about a year ago. Yeah.
So here's a question for you, venture capitalists. Do now those VCs who kind of pulled away from crypto come plunging in again?
No, I think it's probably pretty pragmatic.
I think some LPs are going to come back in, though.
Yeah.
And thus VCs.
I'm interested in what Sam has to say, but
the general trend with most normcore people is they, buy high and sell low. So
Sam and I buy low and sell high, yeah.
Sam, you're not supposed to. Are you dissing your LPs or VCs?
Well, our LPs are great, but but most, I mean, like, look, there's been some funny memes obviously passing around about everyone coming off the AI train and back into the Bitcoin crypto. I actually think there is something else going on though, which maybe is a little more intellectual, which is people need a good narrative, right, at any given time.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really into this, everything's narrative at this point, mostly because I've been reading Harari's kids books to our oldest son, which are great. And if you think about that, I always love reading the intellectual kids books.
They're better than what he was reading before, Dave.
The intellectual kids books are great because if you think about it, what they do is they take this ideas that they're trying to write for like an intellectual audience that are hundreds of pages, and they're like, we're going to do the kids version, and the kids version is better than the adult version because they have to simplify it for kids. It's great.
It's ChatGPT, explain it like I'm 5.
So reading it, and we talk a lot about like the importance of storytelling and narratives. And I actually think what has gone on with the Trump thing is I think it's going to take some wind out of the AI story, because the story is going to be about infrastructure and America and like all that type of stuff. And so you see, like, it's funny, Jess, your article where you talk about, kind of the flattening of AI curves in terms of training. It's like, how well timed is that? It's like, just as that train is starting to slow down. And I'm sure I'm seeing a lot of pitches from AI startups that really aren't where they need to be and overraised and whatever. And they're kind of retrenching. That's kind of the meme of the moment. But it also, a lot of people are just kind of moving on to the next narrative, which is Trump in office. What does that mean for the economy? Infrastructure, blah, blah.
Everyone invest in defense startups.
Totally.
Blah, blah,
and
blah.
so it's going to be, I do think that it's not, crypto might be a little bit of that story. I think crypto is much more global and like a different story that I think is very powerful, obviously. But it is really interesting because I do think we're seeing a narrative shift right now in terms of what the normcore Silicon Valley tech audience is focused on. And it is moving off of AI everything into US government, Trump, defense, etc.
What are the drivers of that narrative shift? I mean, is that A, society, B, Silicon Valley, because of the nature of capital and venture capital and having to attract? Is it the press? I mean, I'm a little tired of it, to be honest.
Of narrative shifts? You want to just stick with the same narratives for the future?
No, I'm just, tired's the wrong word, but like you can see these inflection points, and it's more complicated than that. Because take crypto, right? You often have a couple things going on. You have a hype cycle going on, and then in many cases, you've like these fundamental marches forward that are interesting but less sort of eye grabby. But it is amazing. I don't know. Sometimes, like I've been reporting on this for 20 years, and so like throughout AI, I mean, I'm seeing. And the information is probably seen as one of the more cynical publications covering AI, which I think is completely unfair because
I would call it realistic, not cynical.
Factual, but
yeah.
But I am sort of like, you can feel it coming and you can feel the turn coming, and then you see the turn, and then I don't know.
We've been talking about it here for a year, right?
I think look, this is the interesting thing. I worry. So I really poo-poo what I'll call momentum investors. I won't name names. There's a lot of people out there that clearly the strategy is, as venture capitalists, whatever they're doing, they don't really start from first principles. They see what's moving, and then whatever is moving, they just double down. It's like the classic see a line, go to the front, get out in front and lead it type thing. Yep. And I find doing that extremely cynical. But there is, if you're just in the game for money making,
it's just one strategy. It's one type of investor, right?
It's a pretty good strategy, honestly. And if you're purely looking at it from like a money making perspective, and like those people are very, very sensitive to like what's the next trend. Great, I'm going to go out and lead in front of it and like stack up whatever that is, and it's fine. You kind of move on. I don't know. I find it tiring and not interesting. I'm much more interested in first principles, but it is I think it is worth acknowledging that it's a valid strategy. Like it's not all.
Do you think
wrong.
They're doing that at seed and growth stages, or are you just talking about momentum of the company itself and then piling on?
Well, that too, but I also mean like thematically, like, you know, it's the same people who get out in front of like crypto, and then they get out in front of AI,
right.
and they get out in front of defense, and
like a new way. But those are the people that are on Twitter all day.
Well, those people, some of them are pretty good at what they do. The problem with doing it at seed is that the lead time from when you invest to the realization is so long that you might have gotten in front of the parade, but that doesn't mean you made any money. Whereas if you do it in the public markets, it's great, right?
Sam, I think most of the time you don't make any money. And I think that's actually what's most dangerous about these cycles, particularly for seed investors, right? It's something slow is, offline is, several others very disciplined about, right? Like you cannot get into these cycles and pay high prices and throw a bunch of checks around when things are behaving like this.
That's
right?
That's certainly how I operate, but I also entertain the fact that there are very good investors who take the other approach of just being like, fine, I'm going to be the leader of whatever the movement is at the moment. And you're right, it is hard to get liquidity and exits from it, but every once in a while they catch the right thing and it does actually work. It's not. I think it's easy to be cynical about that strategy, but it's kind of one of those things where you just get tired of it more than anything else, is my view. But the other thing that Aaron, for like a month, was very moron and then became the biggest bear in the world on his crypto. So I'd like to know how you feel about Bitcoin 98,000, Solana 230. I love crypto for a month and now I hate crypto.
Okay. Dave, do you want to attack him with one more thread before we just make this a full-on rebuttal?
I'm good. Let's go.
Because I have another, which is this political moment in Silicon Valley.
Oh, Mr. Kamala, who now likes the Doge.
We're going to zoom back. Aaron, can you, being in the trench, obviously AI has been...
You're going to let him off on Bitcoin? Bitcoin first. Bitcoin first.
Okay, Sam, take it away, Sam. God. I know you've missed the last 2 weeks of the pod. You have the microphone. Go for it.
I just want to hear the Bitcoin.
Yeah, just let them shitpost each other, and you and I can be the peanut gallery.
Is this the most ADD podcast on the internet?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The people love it.
But it's going to get all edited, and it's going to feel coherent.
Okay, great.
Sam, why don't you actually ask a question, frame the topic, and then let Aaron respond.
How do you feel, Mr. Bitcoin crypto skeptic, after your burst of excitement about Bitcoin 98,000?
Yeah. So do you want to be really boring and very nuanced right now, or should we like be very simplistic?
No, we have a boring and nuanced.
Use that for AI. Let's just say something funny on this.
No. Unfortunately, I have to be nuanced on this one. So my issue, I want to be highly precise because there'll be a lot of people, that want to pick this apart. The thing that lost me was Web3. Bitcoin, I've always sort of treated as like, if people want to do a digital gold thing, do a digital gold thing. Like I've never been a gold focused. Obviously, a lot of people are. If you have World War III happen, or you want to store a value that sort of survives different kind of issues, then you go in on Bitcoin as an alternative gold. Kind of makes sense if that's sort of how you're wired. If anything, actually, I'd be a Bitcoin maxi, like a toxic maxi, because I would be like, there's only one true crypto, and that would be Bitcoin. The thing that lost me was when everybody was arguing that what we should do is decentralize all of the infrastructure of the internet. That's just literally, it just costs more to then run every internet service, and it's actually not a very good database for non sort of financial objects. So the moment that people were saying, well, we should just like store like social network graphs on a blockchain, or where we should do large data storage on a blockchain, it's just like technically an inefficient way to run the web's infrastructure. So
I'm with you, but just to push, we'll move on to AI, which everyone actually wants to talk about. You had like a 2-week period where you were euphoric.
What caused this?
Like more euphoric about Web3 than Kamala, more euphoric than Web3, than AI. It was like maximum Aaron, and then you crashed. What happened?
Okay, what happened was this. Okay. What happened was,
we are close readers.
Sam is tracking everything, and then I'm gonna make sure that we talk about the metaverse also for Sam. So so I'm tracking as well. Don't worry. So there was a very brief period where I sort of allowed myself to think there could be some use cases for a trustless infrastructure. Like if there are some things that have to be interoperable between multiple systems, certain things that maybe you wouldn't want to inherently trust the government with, or where you might need a data asset that would be available to multiple systems. And so I kind of let myself get into that way of thinking for a little bit. But then as I dug into the actual entrepreneurs building these things, what I found was more often the case, they were more excited about the sort of financialization or tokenization of their application. And that was the exciting premise. It wasn't the sort of inherent trustlessness of it. It was the financialization of what they were building. And for that, then I got very skeptical because I mean, everybody here has been, pretty close to social networks over the years. I just don't think you can build a social network where financial, where monetization or incentives is at the core of the network.
Yeah,
I think people have to join these things because they want the utility of whatever the network is. And that is how you self-propagate these networks. And so adding a financial incentive sort of creates this very perverse dynamic where sort of, you want to invite 10 friends and they invite 10 friends, and then the early people get all the money and then the later people don't get any of the money. And if the money is the utility, then by definition, your later users are getting less utility.
Yep.
And the way that these networks work is you want Metcalfe's law. You want more utility the more people are on the network, and not sort of less utility the later you join. And so as I was sort of seeing the actual real, application of Web3 versus maybe the idealized sort of thing that was discussed, I got very skeptical that this would actually work in practice, because the kind of people that were promoting this were just promoting these sort of, tokens that were ostensibly, supposed to have utility, but they were really just these kind of, MLM schemes. So that was my concern. Prior to that, I was kind of just indifferent to Bitcoin. I make, jokes on Twitter for the past 10 years, obviously. So like that's out there, but, at times I've gone in and out of some Bitcoin exposure. And no sort of strong opinion one way or another, other than I think it makes sense to have a sort of a digital gold or currency if kind of everybody wants to participate in that. But I am sort of probably a toxic maxi in the sense of like, I don't think you can have 10 of those. I think you kind of have to have everybody decide this is the one, and you can't sort of fragment off into 50 others. So that's sort of the nuance.
So you heard it here first. Box will not be putting its treasury into Bitcoin, and let's talk about AI.
Last question on crypto.
Yeah.
Does anything about this potential like deregulatory moment shape your view? So like there are a lot of people who were kind of skeptics on the sideline, but who now are saying, okay, with the Trump administration and change of administration, the rules are likely to change. And obviously that's fueled a huge run up. But what do you make of that?
Oh, I mean, the Trump administration is very bullish for anybody doing crypto. There's no question. I was treating it from a very purely like, sort of OCD sense of like, will this be a good way to build a network on the internet that is not financial? And so I was just laying out the case why that probably wouldn't work because of these sort of incentive dynamics that you have.
For what it's worth, despite I unfortunately have to agree with you.
I'm actually fine for people to do whatever they want if they're educated on the risks and the rewards and all of that. And like I laugh at meme coins all the time. Like, to each their own. My point was sort of, and again, we all kind of collectively saw Web 2 arrive. I was getting a little bit anxious and nervous about this idea that Web 3 was being described as sort of like somehow harkening back to the origins of Web 2 when everything was sort of mashups and interoperable, and then looking at an architecture that I didn't think could deliver that kind of outcome based on what I was seeing. It's not an argument against just general decentralization, but the architectures that I was seeing get kind of created, I didn't think could lead to that for, again, non-financial use cases. Financial use cases, stable coins, Bitcoin, whatever, like that's all fine.
What, you must be a public company CEO. That's good. I mean, I agree with you.
And that's a wrap for part 2 of our more or less highlights special. 2024 had its fair share of regulation drama, antitrust battles, and crypto surprises. But something tells me 2025 promises to be even bigger. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you next time.